Ever feel like your online shopping cart has a secret life? Where prices inflate overnight like some kind of rogue gameplay.
Huh. Yeah, I know that feeling.
Well, today we're diving into why your digital dollars might not be stretching quite as far and what other unexpected shifts are happening in the world of Sand and Lit.
That's right. Welcome to a deep dive. And today we're fueled by the May 4th, 2025 edition of Consumers 360. That's a news commentary podcast that pulls together a whole heap of fascinating info curated by Consumers.App.
Think of us as your guides, maybe. We're wading through all this data, trying to pull out the key trends and insights that, really matter to you.
Exactly. Our mission today is just to make sense of it all, so you can navigate this consumer landscape with a bit more understanding, maybe even a little bit of savvy.
Okay, so Consumers 360 kicked off with what they called the intertwined worries. We're talking inflation, those sneaky tariffs, and the ever-present anxiety around healthcare.
Always there, isn't it?
Right. So, Money Talks News, over on MSN, reported inflation cooled to 2.4% back in March, which, okay, feels like a small win.
Mm-hmm. Little breathing room.
But the IMF is projecting it to creep back up, maybe 3% by the third quarter, not like panic stations like 2022.
No, not those highs again, hopefully, but definitely something to watch.
For sure. And how do the tariffs fit in?
So this is where it gets interesting. Yale University's Budget Lab, they're saying these 2025 tariffs could actually shave off 1.1% from U.S. GDP growth.
Wow, 1.1%. That's quite a chunk.
It is. They're calling it a really aggressive policy shift. It makes you wonder, how does this filter down to your everyday purchases? For some things going to get noticeably pricier.
Yeah, which sectors feel the pinch most?
And Consumers Research also looked into those 2025 inflation trends, confirming that cooling after the peak, but anticipating that gradual climb. Probably not back to those earlier highs soon, though.
Okay, so tariffs might bump up costs, inflation generally climbing a bit, that's the backdrop. And then healthcare always feels like a moving target. What are the big worries there now?
The main challenges they highlighted are, a mix. Regulatory hurdles, definitely. Rising expectations from us as consumers, wanting more.
Mm-hmm.
And then the financial strain on health plans. They're facing higher medical costs, something called premium deficiency.
Premium deficiency doesn't sound good.
It isn't ideal. But it's not all doom and gloom. Consumers Research also pointed out there's a real push for solutions.
Like what?
Things like expanding telemedicine, making healthcare easier to access. A big focus on health equity, reaching people who've been underserved.
That's crucial.
And shifting toward value-based payments. Paying for better outcomes, not just for doing more procedures. So, yes, pressures, but also innovation.
It really does feel like these things are all connected, doesn't it? Higher prices from tariffs could mean less for healthcare, and round it goes.
Exactly. It's a complex web.
Now, Consumers Research also dug into the academic side of tariffs. What did they find beyond just the immediate price impact?
Yeah, this was fascinating. They talked about tariff network effects. It's not just about, slapping a tax on one import.
Right.
These tariffs cause ripples. They actually reshape global trade patterns, push trade towards other countries or markets.
So it diverts trade.
It does. And here's the surprising bit.
Yeah.
It can actually end up hurting the country imposing the tariffs.
How so?
By making competition from other foreign players tougher and ultimately leading to higher prices and maybe fewer choices for us, the consumers. It really makes you think about who actually wins and loses here.
That's definitely a more complicated picture than just protecting local jobs. Okay, carbon pricing policies also came up. How do those fit in?
Well, connecting to that whole environmental push, carbon pricing is seen as, pretty essential for cutting emissions.
Mm-hmm.
Necessary evil, maybe. Something like that. But they do have a potential impact on inflation. The Research Consumers 360 cited a mission impossible, balancing environmental concerns and inflation, suggests these policies could nudge the CPI upwards.
So another cost pressure.
Exactly. It's a real tightrope walk for policymakers, trying to hit those green targets without making everything unaffordable for everyday folks.
Absolutely, a tricky balance. Okay, we all know online shopping just exploded, especially during the pandemic. How has inflation affected that?
Well, consumer behavior definitely shifted online in a huge way. Consumers Research highlighted an 85% jump in online shopping frequency between 2018 and 2022.
85%. Wow.
Yeah, and the pandemic poured fuel on that fire.
Yeah.
We haven't quite stayed at those peak levels, obviously, but online is still massive.
So how's inflation changing how we shop online?
That's the interesting question, isn't it? Are you still prioritizing the convenience, maybe paying a bit more, or are you finding yourself spending like way more time hunting for those online deals to try and offset the rising costs elsewhere.
Definitely spending more time hunting for deals, no question. And speaking of specific hits, Consumers.App mentioned China's retaliatory soybean tariff on U.S. agriculture. That sounds like a direct blow to farmers.
Oh, it's significant. Consumers research points to expected drops in soybean prices, definitely fewer exports, and lower incomes for U.S. farmers.
Ouch.
It's even led some farmers to rethink what they plant, and it's prompted government responses, subsidies, efforts to find new markets, trying to cushion that blow.
It really shows how these big global trade disputes can hit home right down to the local level.
Absolutely. Real consequences for real people.
So from the big economy down to soybeans, it's clear everyone's having to adapt fast.
Oh.
Okay, let's switch gears. Made in USA in this tariff world, FOX10 Phoenix looked at this. Historically, tariffs were a big tool for protecting U.S. industries, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Consumers research summarized data showing back between 1861 and 1933, U.S. tariffs were sky high, sometimes 50%.
50%?
Yeah, that restriction period, they called it. It really pushed domestic production by limiting foreign competition. Made people buy American.
But then things changed.
Right. After 1934, the trend shifted towards free trade. Tariffs came way down. So this current move towards more aggressive tariffs is kind of a throwback to that earlier protectionist thinking.
Interesting. And how are we as consumers reacting now? Are we suddenly rushing to buy made in USA?
Well, initially, surveys cited by Consumers.App suggested maybe not rushing. Only about 14% were actively prioritizing made in USA, specifically to dodge tariff price hikes.
Okay, not a huge number.
But, and this is key, a huge 79% said they would reconsider and buy American if import prices kept going up.
So our loyalty has a price point.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
If the imported stuff gets too pricey, that made in USA label starts looking a lot more attractive.
Makes sense. So what are businesses doing? Are they leaning into this?
The smart ones are. Consumers research outlined a few strategies, really highlighting their American-made products, obviously. Adjusting supply chains, maybe sourcing more locally. And clever marketing, promoting that made in USA credential. It can become a real selling point if people are worried about import costs.
But what happens when those tariffs really bite and prices jump noticeably? How do we react then?
Research cited in Consumers.App suggests is a sort of a tiered response. A small price hike, maybe 5%. We start looking harder for sales, maybe slightly cheaper options.
Yeah. Okay.
A 10% jump, that's when we might trade down more significantly, maybe to a cheaper brand, regardless of where it's made.
Right.
But if prices jump by, say, 20%, that's when people might just stop buying non-essential things altogether, which has much bigger implications for retail.
That really paints a picture of how tariffs hit our wallets. What about the challenges for those actual made in USA brands? It's not all smooth sailing for them, is it?
No, definitely not. While tariffs create an opening, they face headwinds too. Consumers research mentioned things like just general economic uncertainty, maybe partly caused by the tariffs, which can dampen spending overall.
Okay, so people just spend less everywhere.
Potentially. Plus, even if they gain domestic appeal, their international sales could suffer if other countries retaliate with their own tariffs. It gets complicated fast.
A double-edged sword, like you said. So, summing up how we adjust as consumers, it's all about coping with potential price hikes.
Exactly. We become savvier shoppers, looking for sales, maybe buying fewer imports if we can, exploring those U.S.-made alternatives. Surveys suggest many of us expect to change our habits because of tariff worries.
Driven by concerns about higher prices and maybe fewer choices.
Right. And businesses that get that adapt, they're the ones likely to do okay.
And the overall economic impact of all these tariffs, what's the bigger picture look like?
Well, according to consumers research, pulling from various sources, it includes things like lower GDP growth forecasts for the U.S., increased fears of recession, partly because of these policies.
Right, the uncertainty factor.
Definitely. Plus, direct cost increases for us consumers on imports.
Yeah.
And that big issue of retaliation from trading partners, which just adds instability across the board.
Okay, let's hop across the globe now. Over to Australia. SBS is reporting a big shift in grocery shopping there. Sounds like supermarket-owned brands or home brands are really taking off. What's driving that?
Yeah, it seems the main driver, according to SBS, is simply the rising cost of living in Australia. People are feeling the pinch, so they're actively looking for cheaper options, and those supermarket-owned home brands, they're fitting the bill perfectly. Classic economic pressure changing habits.
And the supermarkets themselves, how are they responding?
Oh, very strategically. SBS highlighted Kohl's, for example. They've massively expanded their home brand range, added something like 1,100 new products recently, bringing their total to around 6,000 home brand items. It meets the demand, sure, but it's also great for their bottom line. Those own brands usually have much better profit margins than the national brands.
Right. A win for the budget shopper, maybe an even bigger win for the supermarket. How's this changing how Australians actually choose where to shop?
It really points to a broader shift. Australian consumers seem to be prioritizing value for money over, strict brand loyalty right now.
Makes sense.
And this is heavily influenced by the economy, inflation, supply issues. Research cited in Consumers.App supports this. It suggests we're increasingly picking stores based on the best overall value proposition.
And a good range of affordable home brands is a big part of that value.
Exactly. It's become the key factor in store choice.
And retail inflation itself must be pouring gasoline on this fire.
Absolutely. It strains budgets even more, making those lower home brand prices incredibly appealing. It helps consumers manage, sure, but it also lets supermarkets stay competitive overall, pulling in those budget shoppers. Good for foot traffic.
What does this mean for their supply chains, though, if everyone wants the home brand stuff?
Yeah, that puts pressure on them. They need consistent, reliable supply. That might mean renegotiating with suppliers, finding new ones maybe, getting better prices, and really focusing on efficient management. You don't want empty shelves where your key value product should be. That kills confidence fast.
So ultimately, our choices dictate whether these home brands really stick around.
Consumer choice is everything here. Research cited in Consumers.App suggests that how easy it is for us to actually find and buy these brands and just the sheer variety offered are really key.
Right.
And crucially, the perception matters. Do people believe these home brands are just as good or good enough value compared to the big names? That perception builds loyalty.
So what are the wider economic ripples of this home brand boom in Australia?
Well, you'd expect increased competition in the retail sector, right?
Sure.
Supermarkets fighting for those value shoppers.
Definitely.
That could lead to more product variety, maybe more competitive pricing overall. It might even help slow down overall retail inflation a bit by providing those cheaper alternatives. And like we said, it boosts the supermarket's own profitability.
Okay, let's stick with supermarkets, but think about what's in the cart. The Sydney Morning Herald had a piece questioning how healthy some quote-unquote healthy foods actually are. What are the common traps there?
That's such an important point they made. Just because a label shouts natural, organic, or gluten-free doesn't automatically mean it's good for you.
Right, the buzzwords.
Exactly. It can be marketing spin. Those products can still be packed with sugar, unhealthy fats, additives. The real takeaway is you got to become a label detective. Look past the front of pack claims.
Good reminder. It's easy to get fooled. What about things like community food co-ops? How do they stack up against supermarkets for healthy options?
Interestingly, research cited in Consumers.App suggests that joining community co-ops, like one called Box Divvy in Australia, can actually lead to better eating habits.
Really? How so?
People involved reported eating more fruit and veg and felt less food insecure. It suggests these alternative models might offer more affordable access to genuinely healthy stuff compared to standard supermarkets.
And are there economic reasons why healthy choices are harder in regular supermarkets?
Oh, definitely. Studies show that with inflation rising, many people face real financial barriers to affording the healthy options in supermarkets. That's where community initiatives can make a difference, offering cheaper alternatives.
So for most of us shopping in regular supermarkets, what are some practical tips for making healthier choices?
The Sydney Morning Herald had some good, actionable advice. Plan ahead. Make a list focused on whole foods, fruit, veg, lean protein, whole grains.
Stick to the list.
Try to. And when you're there, actually read the nutrition labels.
Yeah.
Check sugar, fat, additives, and crucially, try to resist those impulse buys, especially the ones near the checkout when you're hungry.
Yes, the checkout gauntlet. And supermarkets themselves, they use placement to influence us.
They're masters at it, placing those ultra-processed, high-margin foods in prime spots, eye level, end caps checkout lanes to grab your attention.
So we need to be aware.
Exactly. Know the tactics, stick to your list as much as possible, and make a conscious effort to spend more time in the healthier sections, like the produce aisle.
What about superfoods? Are they worth the hype?
Well, superfood isn't really a scientific term, is it? But some common supermarket foods absolutely pack a nutritional punch. Think whole grains for fiber, berries for antioxidants, fatty fish for omega-3s. Definitely good to include those.
So what's the big takeaway on supermarkets and our health?
They have a huge influence. Just because they're where most of us get our food, they can be a force for good, making lots of fresh and healthy options available. And as consumers research suggests, they could potentially do more. Maybe provide educational resources or even incentives to nudge us towards healthier choices.
Okay, let's dive into some pretty cutting-edge food tech now. GB News reported on gene-edited superfruits potentially coming to British supermarkets. What's the big deal with CRISPR gene editing here?
CRISPR is a real game changer for agriculture. It allows for incredibly precise genetic tweaks in plants.
Right, much more targeted than older methods.
Exactly. And as consumers research explained, this means we can develop fruits with really desirable traits, like think bananas that don't brown so quickly, or strawberries that stay fresh for longer.
That would be handy.
Wouldn't it? And the tech is proving pretty cost-effective and efficient, too. It's a powerful tool for tackling food waste and just improving food quality overall. Truly transformative stuff.
So what kind of impact could these gene-edited fruits have in UK supermarkets?
Well, with the legislation getting closer in the UK, they could make a big splash. GB News highlighted longer shelf lives, potentially enhanced nutritional benefits in some cases, and a big reduction in food waste.
Companies like Tropic and Simplot are involved.
There's some of the pioneers, yes, and it really aligns with what consumers increasingly want, more sustainable, resilient food options.
But with any tech that messes with nature, there are ethical questions, right? What are the concerns?
That's a really crucial point. The potential is exciting, yes, but we absolutely need to consider the ethics. Things like unforeseen impacts on ecosystems, any potential health risks, however small, and transparency. Clear labeling is going to be key so people know what they're buying. Consumers research notes that strong regulations and public awareness are vital for building trust here.
How could these fruits help with bigger global issues like food security or the environment?
They offer real potential there, making crops more resistant to pests, diseases, climate stress that can lead to more stable food supplies. Huge for food security.
Right.
Plus, longer shelf life means less waste and potentially less need for pesticides and fertilizers, which is obviously better for the environment.
And it's not just editing the fruit, but also how we check its quality, something about non-destructive testing.
Exactly. Some really cool tech there. Sensors that can check ripeness and texture, like for blueberries or strawberries, without actually damaging the fruit.
How does that work?
Things like magnetized nanocomposite cilia, apparently. It improves accuracy, ensures only top-quality fruit reaches us, which boosts value and competitiveness. Pretty neat.
And the rules around gene-edited food are changing in the UK.
Looks that way. GB News reported the legislation passed the House of Commons. Now it's heading to the House of Lords for final approval. It signals a definite shift towards embracing biotech for healthier, more sustainable food.
Of course, getting this tech from the lab to the supermarket shelf involves hurdles. What challenges does farming face in adopting it?
Yeah, implementation is key. Navigating regulations, definitely, addressing any public skepticism, and just the technical complexities of the modifications.
So farmers need support.
Absolutely. Ongoing research, clear communication, education programs, all crucial for helping farmers adopt these techniques safely and effectively, and ultimately gain consumer trust.
Now, India is also making strides, specifically with climate-resistant rice. Business Standard reported on this. Tell us about that.
This is really important work. India's developed 2 new genome-edited rice varieties, Kamala and Pusa DST Rice 1. They're engineered specifically to handle climate change impacts better.
How so? What makes them special?
They mature faster, which is useful.
Yeah.
They have the potential for significantly higher yields, maybe up to 30% more. And they were made using CRISPR-Cas editing for better tolerance to stresses like drought and high salt levels. Plus, they need less water.
That sounds like a massive win for agriculture in India, given climate change challenges.
Absolutely. It's a major step for crop productivity and sustainability there. Better resistance to drought and salinity, which are growing problems, could revolutionize rice production. Rice is staple food for so many people.
And the economic benefits must be huge, too.
Potentially, yes. Higher yields mean more income for farmers, better food security for the country, and using less water means lower irrigation costs and more sustainable farming overall.
What was the key science behind making this work?
The crucial bit was using CRISPR-Cas, specifically a method called SDN1 editing. They targeted a specific gene, the DST gene, for drought and salt tolerance.
Oh, okay.
This precise targeting lets the rice handle tough conditions better without sacrificing yield or the quality of the grain itself. That balance is critical.
So it thrives under stress, not just survives. How does this help environmental sustainability in India?
Several ways. Better climate adaptability means it can grow where conditions are getting tougher. Using less water conserves a vital resource. And generally needing fewer inputs like fertilizer because they're more resilient is a plus.
What hurdles might slow down adoption by farmers in India?
Well, similar challenges. Navigating regulatory approval, ensuring consumers accept GM crops, educating farmers on how to best grow these new varieties. And maybe some infrastructure needs to support wider use.
And how does India's work here fit into global agricultural trends?
It aligns perfectly. It's part of that worldwide movement, using biotechnology to make crops more resilient, more productive, especially with climate change looming. It's about sustainable agriculture ensuring food security.
Okay, let's shift focus to the checkout line. FOX32 Chicago reported Target is changing its self-checkout rules due to shoplifting concerns. What's the story?
Yeah, Target's decided to limit self-checkout lanes, making them for customers with 10 items or fewer. It's a direct response to a reported rise in shoplifting.
Interesting. What's the goal?
Two things, really. Better security, obviously, but also trying to improve efficiency by pushing larger purchases to staffed lanes. That allows more oversight and maybe makes things smoother for people with big carts.
Self-checkout is everywhere now. How has it evolved, and has shoplifting always been part of the conversation?
Oh yeah, it grew incredibly fast. Predictions were for 1.2 million units globally by 2025. It offers efficiency, lower labor costs for retailers. But yeah, the shoplifting risk was always a known downside. As Consumers Research points out, lots of retailers are now looking at hybrid models. A mix of self-service and staff help trying to find that sweet spot between convenience and security.
Is new tech helping combat shoplifting?
There are some interesting developments. Consumers.App mentioned AI surveillance systems like Shopformer. Instead of just video, it analyzes shoppers' body movements to spot suspicious behavior.
Body movements, how does that work?
The idea is it's more privacy conscious than facial recognition, but still accurate at detecting potential theft. These systems offer potential for real-time monitoring at scale.
And how does retail inflation link to rising shoplifting? Is there a connection?
It seems likely. Inflation puts a real strain on budgets, right? People look for ways to save, seek cheaper options. Surveys cited by Consumers Research show lots of consumers are worried about finances, cutting back on non-essentials.
And that pressure might lead some to shoplift.
Unfortunately, that economic pressure can be a contributing factor in some cases, yes.
So for retailers like Target limiting self-checkout, what are the economic trade-offs?
Well, limiting self-checkout might mean higher operating costs, needing more staff for traditional lanes.
Right.
But that could be balanced out by reducing losses from theft. Plus, you might get better customer satisfaction for people who prefer staffed checkouts, which helps loyalty. It's a real balancing act.
It feels like retailers are constantly tweaking that balance between tech and people at the checkout.
Exactly. These hybrid systems are becoming common because customer preferences are diverse. Some want speed, love self-checkout. Others value the personal help from a staffed lane. Finding the right mix is key.
And long-term, what do trends say about our preferences? Is one winning out?
Trends suggest it's pretty evenly split, actually. Roughly 40% still like self-checkout for speed, but another 40% prefer the service of a staffed lane.
So the hybrid model is likely here to stay.
Seems that way. Offering both options probably caters best to the widest range of shoppers for the foreseeable future.
Let's switch gears again, completely different direction. Cosmetic procedures. Insider and Times now both reported on the rise of fillers and those quick lunchtime treatments. What first sparked the surge in filler demand?
A lot of it traces back to the pandemic, actually. The Zoom effect, they called it.
Yes. Staring at our own faces on video calls all day.
Exactly. It led to heightened self-awareness, more scrutiny of our appearance. Stats showed a noticeable jump in cosmetic procedures, and filler treatments specifically saw a huge 75% rise since 2019, according to reports cited by Insider.
Wow. Are there significant health risks people should know about?
Yes, there are risks. Recent studies flag things like vascular complications, blocking blood vessels, essentially. That's serious.
Yikes.
Which is why, as mentioned in Consumers.App, using ultrasound during filler injections is becoming more important, especially in tricky areas like the lips. It gives practitioners real-time visualization, helps avoid arteries, and significantly cuts the risk of those complications.
How has the filler market evolved since that pandemic peak? It's still growing.
Oh yes, significantly. Projections show strong growth, like 9.5% annually through 2030. It's driven by ongoing demand for minimally invasive procedures, more public awareness, and better tech in the fillers themselves.
That's sustained growth. And Times now mentioned dentists getting more involved. How does that fit?
Yeah, dentists have a deep understanding of facial anatomy, right? So many are expanding their practice to include facial aesthetics, administering fillers. A study cited in Consumers.App noted it complements their existing skills well, a more integrated approach to facial appearance.
You mentioned ultrasound again. Why is it becoming such a big deal for fillers?
It just dramatically improves precision. Seeing those underlying structures, arteries, muscles, in real time minimizes the risk of accidentally hitting something you shouldn't. It makes the procedure safer and more effective.
So the Zoom effect had a lasting impact.
Absolutely. That increased self-consciousness didn't just disappear. Many people continue seeking treatments to enhance their appearance, maybe feel more confident. It reflects a broader cultural shift towards acceptance of cosmetic enhancements.
And the filler tech itself is getting better.
Yes, constantly. Safer formulations, longer-lasting results. Combine that with techniques like ultrasound guidance, and it just makes fillers more appealing, safer, less downtime, better outcomes. That attracts more consumers.
Now, Times now also mentioned lunchtime procedures. What are those exactly?
They're basically quick cosmetic treatments you can genuinely get done on your lunch break or in under an hour. Minimal downtime.
Like Botox.
Exactly. Botox, maybe some types of fillers, laser skin treatments, chemical peels, microdermabrasion, things that don't require significant recovery.
What makes them so popular?
Convenience, pure and simple. People want results without disrupting their busy lives. Minimal downtime is key.
What are the most common ones people get?
Botox for wrinkles is huge. Dermal fillers for volume, microdermabrasion and peels for skin texture, and various laser treatments for hair removal or skin rejuvenation.
Is there good science on their safety and effectiveness?
Generally, yes. Studies on things like fillers and Botox show they're safe and effective when done by qualified, experienced professionals.
That qualifier is important.
Crucial. Because risks exist: bruising, swelling, infection, asymmetry. You need a licensed practitioner, and you need to have that thorough consultation beforehand.
How do these quick fixes fit our modern lifestyle?
Perfectly, really. They offer visible improvements without needing days off work for recovery. They cater to that demand for quick, effective solutions in a fast-paced world.
What are the potential downsides people should weigh up?
Well, besides the risks we mentioned, bruising, swelling, maybe infection, there's the cost, obviously. And the results aren't permanent, so you need repeat treatments. Choosing the right practitioner who understands your goals and anatomy is paramount.
And the tech behind these is also improving, making them even quicker.
Definitely. Advancements in laser systems, better filler formulations, it all contributes to making procedures faster, often more comfortable and more effective. That just fuels the popularity further.
It really feels like attitudes towards cosmetic stuff have shifted, become more open.
Yeah, the demand for these non-invasive quick options reflects that. It's becoming more normalized, seen perhaps more as self-care or maintenance, aligning with busy lives and a desire for convenient enhancements.
Okay, let's turn to a really critical global issue: food loss and waste. Business Daily Africa and Gulf News had insights here. How vital is changing our behavior in tackling food waste?
It's absolutely fundamental, as Business Daily Africa stressed. Reducing waste needs a collective shift in habits, from farm to fork.
So it's not just about tech solutions.
Tech helps, but behavior is key. It means understanding why we waste food, and then actively changing things through public awareness campaigns, education, making different choices in how we buy, store, and use food.
And what role does technology play in making agriculture more sustainable?
Technology offers powerful tools. Think advanced sensors monitoring soil, communication tech giving farmers real-time data, smart programming optimizing resource use like water and fertilizer.
Making farming more efficient.
Exactly. More efficient, more resilient. That improves food security and sustainability overall.
Remind us just how bad the environmental impact of food waste is. It's huge, right?
It's staggering. Food loss and waste account for about 3.3 billion tons of CO2 emissions globally each year. That's enormous.
Wow.
Plus, when food rots in landfills, it releases methane, a greenhouse gas way more potent than CO2 in the short term. And think of all the wasted resources: water, land, energy, labor, all for nothing.
There's a global target to reduce this, isn't there? What are the main strategies?
Yes, SDG Target 12.3 aims to have global food waste per capita by 2030. The key strategies include First, preventing waste from happening at all.
Source reduction.
Right. Then enhancing food donation systems, getting surplus food to people who need it, improving recycling and composting, international collaboration to share what works, and strong policy frameworks to support all this.
What about the stuff left over after harvest, like stalks and straw? Can that be used better?
Yes, agricultural crop residues can be really valuable for sustainable livestock farming. Using them as alternative animal feed reduces the need for specially grown feed crops.
Saving resources.
Exactly. It lowers feed costs for farmers and can even help cut methane emissions from livestock by improving digestion. A win-win.
Africa's farming sector faces specific challenges, but also opportunities with tech, right?
Definitely. ICT innovations like mobile phones offer amazing potential for farmers to access vital info. But challenges remain infrastructure limits, needing content in local languages, digital literacy. Still, the potential to boost productivity and food security is huge.
Now, Gulf News reported on new rules in Saudi Arabia for wedding venues, requiring partnerships to prevent food waste. That sounds quite specific.
It is, and it shows how seriously Saudi Arabia is taking this. The new regulations cover venue standards, architectural, operational, environmental. But a key part is mandatory partnerships with certified food waste prevention groups.
To handle leftovers.
Essentially, yes. To manage surplus food, safely repackaging, redistributing to the needy, or recycling what can't be donated.
Why the focus on weddings? Is waste a big issue there?
Apparently so. Food waste is a massive problem overall in Saudi Arabia, costing billions annually, maybe a third of the total food supply wasted. Weddings, with large crowds and often lavish buffets, are likely significant contributors. Makes sense to target them.
So these certified groups will handle all the surplus food from weddings.
That's the plan, partnering with venues to ensure safe handling, repackaging, redistribution, and then recycling or composting what's left. A structured approach.
How does this fit with Saudi Arabia's broader sustainability goals?
It's a direct part of their wider push for sustainability across the economy. Tackling food waste in a major sector like events is a concrete step towards those national environmental targets.
What impact will this have on how wedding venues operate there?
Likely significant changes. They'll need to meet these new standards for facilities, food safety, environmental practices. And building those partnerships with waste prevention groups becomes mandatory, requiring new processes.
And economically, how might this help address that huge cost of food waste?
By forcing venues to actively manage and reduce waste, it should cut down on spoilage losses and disposal costs. It contributes to a more economically sensible food system.
And could it change what consumers expect from event venues?
Very likely. It raises awareness. As venues adopt these practices and maybe even promote their commitment, consumers might start preferring or even demanding venues that show clear environmental responsibility.
Okay, our final big topic, plastic pollution and alternatives. House Digest explored this. The impact of plastic, especially in oceans, is just terrifying, isn't it?
Deeply worrying. Estimates are around 8 million metric tons pouring into oceans yearly. It accumulates in those huge garbage patches, harms wildlife through entanglement and ingestion. And there's growing evidence about hormonal disruption from chemicals leaching out. That prediction, the plastic could outweigh fish by 2050. It's a stark warning.
Truly terrifying. What are some simple, eco-friendly swaps we can make for things like plastic wrap?
There are great options now. Beeswax wraps are fantastic, reusable, biodegradable. Silicone bowl covers create an airtight seal, dishwasher safe. Good old glass jars are endlessly useful. Even things like banana leaves in some places naturally compostable.
Plastic wrap is so common, but what makes it so bad environmentally?
Well, most of it isn't recyclable. It just persists for hundreds of years, breaking down into tiny microplastics but never really going away. Plus, some types, like PVC, can leach chemicals or harbor bacteria.
Are there direct health worries for us using it with food?
Potential concerns, yes. Chemicals like phthalates or BPA found in some wraps might leach into food, especially if heated. Some studies link these chemicals to hormonal issues. Best to err on the side of caution.
It's good to hear about progress on sustainable plastics. What kind of innovations are emerging?
Scientists are making real strides. Biodegradable composites, like those using cellulose nanocrystals, CNCs, show promise. Research is ongoing to improve their strength so they can replace traditional plastics in more uses.
What about biodegradable plastics like PHAs? How do they stack up?
PHAs are derived from biological sources, making them much more sustainable. They can have similar properties to conventional plastics, but break down naturally. They hold real potential as replacements for petroleum-based plastics.
Could we actually upcycle the plastic waste we already have into something useful?
There's exciting research there, too. One approach uses something called atmospheric pressure, non-thermal plasma, to convert plastic waste into hydrogen gas.
Hydrogen fuel from plastic.
Potentially. If powered by renewables, it could be a clean energy source, tackling both plastic waste and energy needs. Very innovative.
Finally, let's talk glitter. Seems harmless, but NDTV and others highlighted its dark side. What's the main issue?
The main issue is that most glitter is plastic. Tiny, tiny pieces of plastic. So it's a major, often overlooked source of microplastic pollution, especially in water.
And what harm does it do there?
These tiny particles can disrupt crucial biological processes in marine life, like biomineralization, how creatures form shells and skeletons. Messing with that has huge knock-on effects for ocean ecosystems, maybe even climate regulation.
Hard to believe tiny sparkles do that. How does glitter contribute to the bigger plastic problem?
Because it's non-biodegradable microplastic, it gets everywhere. Soil, water, air. It can absorb and carry harmful chemicals, entering food chains, risking environmental and even human health.
Is there solid scientific proof of glitter's harm?
Yes, recent research specifically showed that PT-based glitter actively disrupts that biomineralization process in marine organisms. It's not just theoretical. It's a demonstrated effect, raising serious ecological concerns.
Are regulators or businesses doing anything about it?
Thankfully, yes. Awareness is growing. The EU is phasing out traditional plastic glitter by 2030, and some UK retailers have already voluntarily stopped selling products with it. Positive steps.
Are there better alternatives available?
Yes, more sustainable options are appearing. Glitter made from plant-based materials or biodegradable plastics, designed to break down much faster and more safely.
Beyond marine life, how do microplastics like glitter affect soil and water systems on land?
Studies show they can hinder the growth of key soil organisms, disrupting nutrient cycles, potentially harming soil health, plant growth, and maybe even food security in the long run.
So glitter isn't just a trivial issue, it's part of this massive microplastic threat.
Exactly. It highlights how even seemingly small things contribute. Microplastic pollution, from glitter or crumbling bottles, threatens biodiversity, contaminates resources, poses health risks. It needs a concerted global effort, reducing plastic overall and shifting to sustainable alternatives.
Wow, well, that is a ton of information to digest. We've really covered a lot of ground today, taken a proper deep dive into a whole range of consumer trends, all thanks to the content from that May 4th, 2025 Consumers 360 deep dive, pulling from Consumers.App.
Indeed, and looking back, a few key themes really jump out, don't they? You see how economic worries are clearly shaping how we buy things and even driving policy changes.
Definitely.
There's that unmistakable push for sustainability cropping up everywhere, from food tech to packaging to waste management, and just the constant rapid evolution of technology, changing what we consume and how we consume it. It never stops.
Thank you so much for taking this, incredibly informative deep dive with us today. We really hope it's given you, our listeners, some valuable insights into the forces shaping things right now.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for joining us on this exploration.
Now, if you think about the blend of technology and our daily lives, from gene-edited food aiming for sustainability to AI watching us shop. Here's something sure. What is one emerging trend that we're seeing profoundly impact how we consume goods and services in the next few years? Something to really think about.